Hello, I'm Ed Hope, and with this video and my patterns, we're going to make a carousel horse. Let's see where we're going to go with it. Alright, as you can see, there are two different types of carousel horses. You have the standard and the jumper, and the patterns are included for both. I'm going to be making the jumper, and this is the material I'm going to be using. This is basswood. Do you see a carousel horse in here? Well, you will. I've got 50 feet of basswood in 2-inch thicknesses in varying widths. And I've got 20 board feet in the 1-inch or 3/4 material in varying widths. If you can get it in a wider material, it's better. I like to have at least 10 inches or 10.5 inches optimum for the width of the body. The rest of it, if you need the widths, you can join together if you're pretty good with a plane or you have a joiner. First things you're going to want to do is assemble the patterns out of your pattern book and tape them together. And then choose the body pattern and your nicest piece of material for your side, preferably a nice one that's 10 to 10.5. It's really not critical. You can make the body a little bit narrower if you only have a 10. I think the pattern fits a 10.5, but it's not critical. If you don't have one this wide, you can plane some together. Take the bottom of the pattern and place it along the bottom edge of the wood so the point comes here. If your wood is too narrow, go ahead and move the pattern down a little bit to adjust for it. And then draw it out. Now I've got the two side pieces. I'll put them together, line them up, and then clamp them. And after they're clamped together, we'll use the plane and plane off all the angles so that they both match. I've planed these two side pieces down on all these angles so it's nice, straight across this way, straight going in this direction. On all of these angles, here and on the bottom. So this is the sides, to make up the sides. This will be the front, this is going to be the top where the neck is, this will be the back. Now in between these pieces, I cut a piece of material that is 7 inches wide, planed on both sides, and it's about 3 foot long. 3 foot is more than I need, but it will allow a little extra in case of error, because we're going to cut the angles that this will go into. This will be clear as we go along. Now, to get the proper angles for this centerpiece, this angle here is nearly square. Well, mine is square, and if it's close to square, that's good enough. So what I want to do is get this angle here so I can set my saw to make that cut. Use an adjustable bevel, placing it on here, and tightening that up. That gives me the angle. I've transferred the angle from the adjustable bevel to the saw blade. If you don't have a radial arm saw, this can be done on a table saw. I think it's going to require at least a 9-inch blade and perhaps a 10-inch blade to make that depth of cut that this angle is going to require. In order to get the proper length I'm going to need for this front piece, I'll lay this down, take my center section, lay it across here, and draw a line. Now it's better to cut this just a little longer than you need. Alright, let's see how it fits. Very nice. Just a little bit long, which I allowed for, so I can go back and I can plane that down later. We're going to use this same angle that we just cut, which will then fit against this piece that we just cut off. It'll go right in here like this. On this side, where this angle comes up, I'm going to place a mark right here, because we're going to need to cut that off. What I do now is draw this line here at this point so that this will be 90 degrees to the bottom of the side. Take the adjustable bevel, and I'm going to pick up this angle from here. You got the angle, and then transfer it to the saw. That on the blade off of this adjustable bevel. Take my mark and extend it. And then complete the cut. Perfect. All right. Got this glued down, clamped. Notice I've used this piece of wood here to help join these two pieces together as I clamp that down. Make sure you have a nice tight seam here. If it isn't tight, you can sometimes pull it together with a bungee cord by wrapping it around, pulling these together, maybe a couple of loops. Sometimes a bicycle tire will come in handy, or strips of inner tube to wrap around. to pull parts together. Alright, these two pieces are glued into place. They're solid. We have two other pieces to complete this part of it. I cut a 1-inch piece down to 7 inches so that it match the same height here. I've used this 1-inch piece for the belly instead of the 2-inch so I can save on material and cost. It kind of lightens up the horse a little bit. This will go right here. The other piece is a 2-inch piece, and this will be for the rear, and it'll go right here. Notice that there's a slight angle that has to be cut for this. These pieces are dry now. Put the other side on. It fits nice and solid. Glue this on. Notice in your pattern book that there are two different patterns for two different styles of rear legs. This rear leg is used on the stander, and it can also be used on the jumper. I've included it on the jumper so that it's attached to the base, which gives the horse more stability. Now, if you prefer to have both legs off the base or prefer to have them parallel, you can use this outside pattern for both legs. The same is true for the front legs. There's patterns included for two different styles of legs. But if you prefer to have them parallel, you can choose whichever pattern and use the same pattern for both legs. Right, the next thing you want to do is cut out all your patterns for your legs, lay them out on a 2-inch material, lay them out in such a way as to make the most efficient use of the material. As I said before, I've got 50 board feet, but if you have some bad ends or some splits which you want to avoid on both ends, then you may have to buy more than 50 board feet because you'll have more waste. All right, now that we've got them all drawn out, the next thing to do is kind of cut them into sections as small as possible. I'm going to use a radial arm saw. If you don't have one, you can use a hand saw. All right, now I've cut them into pieces, manageable pieces that I can then cut out on the bandsaw. Here's my bandsaw. If you don't have a bandsaw, you can use a jigsaw with a longer blade that'll go through 2-inch material. Right, we've done our 2-inch material, cut out all the legs in 2-inch material. The next step is to cut out the 1-inch or 3/4 material. This is going to surface both sides of these legs to give us the proper thickness that we need. So with the rear legs, whichever pattern you've chosen, lay out the patterns on your 1-inch material and cut them out. Now if you don't have nice wide material like this, you can go ahead and take these patterns on the legs and cut them at this position here and rearrange them, that way making better use of your material. Now the front legs are a little bit different. Here's the pattern, your patterns for the front leg. Notice it's already cut. Now the reason for that is that we have the patterns for the center section, which gives us a 2-inch material, and then we're going to cut out the 1-inch material that will go on either side, and we want it to lap past this joint. It'll lap past it. And it will make this joint secure. Alright, that takes care of all of our 1-inch pieces. I've cut them all out. We've got 2 pieces for the right leg to go on either side of that one. We've got the 2 pieces for the left leg on either side. 2 pieces for each front leg. Notice how it's going to overhang here for this joint. And the remaining hooks for the front legs, 2 of each. Alright, let's glue them together. I'm using Elmer's Carpenter's glue, also called yellow glue. Another brand is Tight Bond. This is not waterproof, so if this were to be outside, you'd want to have to make sure it's all sealed up. But this is a good strong glue. Don't use the white glue. Make sure it's yellow glue. Get plenty on here. Both pieces. And then spread that around. An application of glue on both pieces. Press these 2 pieces together. Move it around a little bit, get a good seal. And I line up this top edge along here, put a finishing nail through it. Not all the way, leave it up. We're going to take that out later. That's just to hold it in place. Since the glue is slippery, we don't want it to slip around when the clamps are on. Go down here at this other end, line it up. Do the same thing. Various clamps, you have C-clamps, different kinds. Bar clamps, these are going to be real handy. You're going to need at least 2 of these. And the traditional wood clamps. What you want to do is put enough clamps on there so that all the seams around here, you've got some glue squishing out of them a little bit, and they're a good tight seal. Well, I've got a little bit of everything on here. Look around, make sure there's a little glue coming out of the seam here. That assures me that it's a good tight seal. Now the recommended clamp time is 30 minutes. You can be on the safe side and make it 45 minutes to an hour. We'll just set that aside, let it dry. Now while that's gluing up, we'll make sure these front legs, the joints, have a nice tight fit. If they don't, take a block plane. It's a nice plane because it's low angle of the blade to cut across grain. We'll clean this up a little bit. Alright, now that I've planed the two ends here to have a nice tight fit for the front leg, we can start gluing it together. The side piece will go on like this. And I'm going to put a pencil mark along here where it meets, because I'm going to want to put glue on this and this, but not this part yet. Alright, put these two pieces together, turn it over here, line up the top edge, put another brad up here. Stay in alignment. And then clamp it. Last thing we did is to make sure these two joints fit together nicely, these two pieces. We glued this outside piece onto it, and now we're going to glue the two pieces together. The other leg has already been done. I've driven 4 brads in here, finishing nails, 2 on each side, put a rubber band around to draw the two pieces together, and then clamped it. Now the next thing is to put on the front hook. Glue it up. Here's one of the rear legs. It's all glued up now, both sides. Next thing to do is to rough it out. In roughing this out, I want to take this forward edge of the leg all the way down to the glue line on both sides. I'm going to be using a heavy gouge. Could use a large chisel. This is just going to be the roughing out part. I'm also going to use a heavy mallet. It's about 20-ounce mallet. All right, pretty well roughed out on this side. Notice I've got this front edge going all the way to the glue line, and I've done the same with the back edge all the way to the glue line, but leave this part here thick. Leave this position. I chipped off a little piece there. That's going to be all right, but you don't want to take that down. It's going to be the rear part of the leg where it's going to attach to the rump of the horse. Take off a large portion of this, move this in. This is the inside part of the right rear leg, the inside of the thigh. We'll leave a little bit here, leave this flat for now. That's going to be a muscle in here. This is going to indicate a bone. Take a little out here, leave this as a high point for now. Take this down almost all the way through to the next 2-inch layer. Leave this for now, and our next step is to outline the hook. Alright, cut out your hoof pattern, place it on here, bring it near the rear edge, and trace it out. I've carved this around, following the line, and then taper this down to the glue line and hollow this portion out. Leave this part high for now. because it will help it be stable when I turn it over and clamp it down. This is the outside of the leg. I'm not going to carve any of this down. I'm going to leave this flat. I'm going to carve this part down in here, leave this high, carve this down, and then leave this high, just as I did on the other side. Now I finished carving out the rough carving. Remember the difference between the inside, I want this carved in on the inside of the leg, and it's not carved in on the outside of the leg. That's the main difference. It's tapered down on both sides until it meets the glue line along here, all the way down to here, and then it's tapered back out to meet the line of the hook. On this side, it's tapered in for the inside of the leg, and then pull back out, follow the glue line all the way down, take it down to the glue line, and then round it out for the bottom of the hook. This is left high for the thigh. This will be high here for now. It'll be taken down later. This is high. This will also be taken down later when we do the final shaping. And that completes the rear leg. The leg is done essentially the same way. Decide which is going to be the right leg and which is going to be the left leg. The inside of the leg is carved in to the inside of the thigh. Left high, this will be a muscle. This is carved down but left high. It's further down. This is further down than this, but you still want it high. This is going to be a bone. Carve it down here. Leave it high for this knee joint, and then taper it all the way down to the glue line where these two separate pieces meet, and then high for this joint, and then down, and then a high point here. Looking at it from the front, taper it down until you meet the glue line here, and then bring it back. Leave this wide for this knee joint, and then tapers down to the glue line. Don't go any deeper than the glue line here. And then this will meet the glue line all the way through until it meets the hook, just like the rear leg. On the other side of the front leg, this is the outside of the leg, so I am not going to carve into this. I'm going to leave this high. I will carve down, round out a thigh. I'll leave it wide at the knee. This will be carved down again where these two pieces meet down to the glue line, just like the other side. That's what I'm going to do next. There. The inside of the leg, front leg, the outside of the front leg. Now it's all roughed out and ready to attach to the body. Both sides are now glued into place. The body is essentially complete. The next thing to do is to put a piece of block material. I have the 1-inch piece that I've cut, and that's going to go down in here and secure this joint. And the other one is cut from a 2-inch piece of material. Remember, there is a slight angle here, so you can either cut this angle or plane it down later. That's going to fit in here. The reason for this blocking is when I start rounding out for the rear end, in case it comes close to this part, you won't cut into a hollow section. Also, it'll be thick enough to hold the tail when the tail is pegged in. I plane this smooth, matched to the body. This is the show side. And I'm going to make it nice tight fit here so I can't see any light between it, especially on the outside here. Then attach the leg. I put it in place so the front edge is flush, and then trace around the leg. I'm going to attach the legs with 3/8 inch lag screws. The front legs, I'm going to use a lag screw that's 4 inches long. For the rear legs, I'm going to use a lag screw that's 3.5 inches long. The reason being that this is 2-inch material to go through in the front, and it'll be 1x material that's going through in the rear for the rear legs. I'm going to figure about in the center here to drill the hole, a 3/8 inch hole, making sure that it ends up on the inside, goes through on the inside of the body, the box, inside this line. Now that the hole is drilled, I'm going to turn the body around. Here's the hole close to the inside of the body. I need to make space for the washer in the head of the screw. Now that I've got the hole drilled, I'm going to put the front leg back in place, line it up, and go through the hole with a pencil and make a mark on the leg. Darken that mark, and that's where I'm going to drill a pilot hole for the screw. Alright, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch drill bit for the pilot hole on the leg. It's a little bit small, but it's small because it's soft wood. The bolt is, or rather the screw, the lag screw is 4 inches long. We're going through 2 inches of material, so I want to drill in to the leg 2 inches. Measure off 2 inches. Put a piece of masking tape for a stop position. Good heavy coat of glue. Both pieces. Put the lag screw in, tighten it up until the glue starts squishing out. And then attach the other 3 legs in the same manner. Now that all the legs are attached, I'm going to turn it over. The next step is to put on this neck support block. I want to get the proper angle for this, so it's square here. Put the adjustable bevel up against the square, get the angle, and then transfer that angle to the saw. I've cut the angle that I determined here. I've also kept the same angle on the saw and cut it for this front portion also. That way it'll start to give us a roundness of the front of the chest. Now this piece is a little bit shorter than the width of the body, and that's okay. I've got about a 1/4 inch short on either side. That's alright because the neck is going to taper upward. Now I've got this piece ready, good fit all around, nice and solid, time to glue it. In cutting out the head, we need a 2-inch piece of material. that's got a good surface on both sides. The pattern calls for it to be 10 inches wide. This one I'm using because I want a fuller main is going to be 11 1/4, what I'm using here. And then to go out at this distance, the plan calls for 3, but I'm going to take it out to 7 because, again, I want a nice fluffy mane. So it depends on what size mane you want. Now, this piece of material, if you don't have one that's 10 or 11 inches wide, which is difficult to get sometimes, it can be planed together and glued up. Make sure that where you glue, the line will go through the mouth and through this area of the pattern, because most of that seam will be covered up. You'll see that later. Lay the pattern out, making the best use of the material, and trace it out. After the two pieces are cut out, place them together. Make sure the face all lines up and that it's solid. The mane, if it's irregular, won't matter. Apply glue to both sides and clamp them together. After the two halves have dried together, plane this bottom surface so it's smooth and square. The next step is to take the cheek pattern, lay it out on 1-inch material, trace it, cut one for each side of the face. Cutting out the two cheeks, put them together, plane this bottom edge so it's nice and smooth and square. Place one cheek, see that it lines up on the bottom and lines up along the bottom of the face. And then glue it both sides of the piece and glue it together. Now I have both cheeks glued in place. Make sure that this surface is flat all the way across. The next step is to make this block, which is going to go on the neck to give it the angle and a place to attach to the neck. The block is 4.5 inches long. It started out being 3 inches this way, made out of 2-inch material, and this is an 18-degree angle that was placed on it. That angle is in the pattern. You can copy off the pattern. Once that's cut, this is smooth, then use about a number 12 screw that is 3.5 inches long. Now, I need it to penetrate about 3/4 of an inch to an inch out the bottom. Since the screw isn't that long, I countersunk the holes so that when I place it all the way through, I'll get the depth that I need on the screw. So after this piece is prepared, put glue on both surfaces. Glue this on, making sure that the head is going in the right direction. You want the head to turn a little bit angled to the right as you're looking at the horse, to the show side. This block will be placed about a 1/2 inch back. You draw a line between the two cheeks. It's a 1/2 inch back from there. And then secure. With the head, it is starting from about this high point on down. I'm going to chisel all this down to a taper until it meets even here. This will be tapered out. Now that's done. Got a smooth slope going to the glue line. The next thing I want to do is back this vein off from the top of the head. So I'm going to chisel this out about 1 inch down. I'm going to use a parting tool and this tool. This is what it looks like after I've taken the mane in, got it off to this brow, and then I smoothed out the glue line. Here's what it looked like before I smoothed out the glue line. And now the next thing to do is to put in a positioning for the eyes. Let's take a look at where we're going to go with it. This angle here is 30 degrees, and it's cut in to the second layer into the 2-inch thick material here. This cheekbone is slightly angled and meets in this corner. I'm going to draw some guidelines down, get from the high point, top of the eye, down, and at a point about halfway between the top lip and the top of the nose. And then bring this line across. Now it's just a guide. I've set my adjustable bevel to 30 degrees to use as a guide in cutting this eye portion in at the 30-degree angle. So as I cut, I kind of use this as a guide. It can be a little more than 30 degrees, so it's not critical. I'm going to take on this cheekbone line and keep an angle here. Like that. Alright. Checking my angle with the adjustable bevel. I'm using this block of wood because the bevel is too long. I'm going to leave this slight roundness over this eye. Overall the angle is 30 degrees, but I'm going to leave a little bit of a roundness. I'm going to go into the next layer 3/8 of an inch. Now it's time to go to handwork instead of beating it. I'm going to clean up all this material, take it down 3/8 of an inch here, and then round out a little bit all these corners. This cheekbone, notice, is rounded and at an angle. Later I can change this when I fit the eye to make it work all together. Now that the eye is roughed in, I'm going to start putting the neck on so I can attach the head to the body.
if you're going to make the horse, you may want to complete the head or nearly complete it before attaching it to the body. You might feel comfortable with that, but I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next step. This is the pattern for the neck. There's only one pattern, and it'll only make one piece. The others will have to be custom fit. Well, this first pattern also has to be altered in order to fit the width of the mane. I'm making an exceptionally large mane, so that this pattern will have to be changed so it'll meet out here at the mane and then taper down to the bottom of the neck. The pattern and the piece that it makes will go on the right side of the head and will have the same 18-degree angle that the neck block has, so it'll fit in this position. I've altered the pattern to fit the extended mane. I've got the piece cut out. I've got my 18-degree angle. It's going to fit this. And it does have to be a precise fit so that it'll be strong, and so that this seam between the head and the neck will not show up when it's done, or it won't be open. I'm going to glue along this edge where it contacts the head, and also on the tab where it contacts the back. And then it's going to take some creative clamping, and this is where that bicycle inner tube is going to come in real handy. Now that this piece is glued into place, I'm going to turn it over and fit the pieces on this inside. There's no pattern, it's all hand fit. I started by cutting the angle to match the head, and then planed it for a nice fit. And then drew out around this tab, and then laid it down, drew a line under here, and then cut this line, which doesn't have to be perfect at this point because I can go back and plane it later once it's glued. The other thing left to do is turn it around and draw a line under the chin and to the bottom of the neck. Now, since this is a center piece, it's going to be sticking out further than the outside edges, so I'm going to leave it long. I'll cut that and then I'll be ready to glue it in place. This piece is done in the same manner. I'll cut the angle. Got a good fit. I've notched out for the tab and placed it here. The next thing I'll do is turn it over. Trace this line. I'm going to make it just a little bigger to be on the safe side. And then taper it to here. Want it to extend out a little bit. So it will become a roundness. I'll have some room to make it round. And then I'll draw the line here. And extend that out and cut that excess off. Now, I could have left a lot more hollow in here, but I want to make sure I've got some wood under this position here, so when I dig down into it, creating the mane, I won't run into a hollow spot. Now I've got the front block in place and the back part in place. And I've glued up two pieces of material because it wasn't wide enough. This is still 2-inch material. I've cut it to fit this angle. And then I've planed it so I have a nice fit through here. So when it's glued, an open seam won't be visible. I drew a line, rough cut this off. Later I'll plane it when I plane the bottom of the neck. I put it in place. The next step is to glue it, clamp it down, and then we'll be ready to attach the head to the body. Now that I've got both sides on, I've planed the bottom very flat so it'll fit nicely with
without any gaps. And then I'm going to put it on here and give it a twist so that the chin ends up being over the top of the right knee. And then I want an equal amount of material on this side as the opposite side. There is some overhang in the front, and there'll be some overhang in the back. When I get it in the position I want, I'm going to trace a line around it. To be attached with 2 lag screws, one in about this position and the other back in here. This is just an approximation. The distance that I want comes out to about 2 3/4 or 3 inches for the front one and for the back. Put that mark on here, and here, and then center it, and that's where I'll drill the pilot hole. Leg screws are the same screws that are used in the legs, 3/8 by 4 inches, and I've piloted a 3/8 inch hole. Now with the head back in position, take a pencil, run it up through the hole, and make a mark with the neck position for the pilot hole. Inch bit marked to a 2-inch depth. I'm going to drill the pilot holes. After it's bolted down, take a damp paper towel and wipe the excess glue off. Later I'm going to be filling this out with another piece, and perhaps a 2-inch piece and a 1-inch piece to fill out the neck on both sides. The next step is to cut a section of 1-inch material, approximately square, 2 pieces, and glue them underneath this neck support, one on each side, to give it strength. Next thing I'm going to do is cut a couple of blocks for the inside of the body. They're going to attach about in the center here, one on each side. And the reason is when I carve into here, this is going to be the narrowest part of the body, and I want to make sure I don't carve into a hollow space. So that's some blocking behind it. Will also give a little added strength. Base. You plane down the surface, and then I'm ready to fit the back on. Now the back piece can be a little narrower than the body itself. The body overall is 10.5 inches, and the back that I'm using is 9.5 inches. That'll give a 1/2 inch shy on either side, and that's all right, but I certainly don't want to go any less than that. And it can also be about a 1/2 inch less at the rear. When that's planed down, I've got a good tight fit. I'm going to glue it and clamp it. This is what the back looks like after it's clamped down, glued down. Notice I've used a piece of material going over 2 blocks to disperse the weight, so I can use 1 clamp on this side. I've done the same on the other side. Again, the bicycle tie ropes come in real handy in order to pull this piece up against the blocking of the neck. So that a nice tight fit, good joint here. What I want to do is fill out this neck so it'll have a nice smooth fill to the body. So I've cut a piece, making sure that it's nice and flush on this side and here. and a nice straight bottom edge so I can get a good fit without any gaps. In cutting this material, I want to make sure that it's going to, when it's carved out, there won't be any gaps, and it'll make a nice continuation in the front of the throat. And the same thing with the back. There isn't going to be much mane on this side, but it'll have to be smooth and come around the back, the neck, and fit in there. Then I have to determine if this is narrow enough here, or if I have to use another filler piece to fill out this. When I look at it from the front, I know that my slope of the neck and the shoulder, that this is going to be all right, and I'm not going to use any more pieces here. This is going to be enough. When it carves through, it'll be smooth. After the first side is done, the second side is done in the same manner. I've glued this chest block into position. This is a 1-inch piece of material. This chest block will give a nice roundness to the chest. I've rounded off the front so it's a smooth transition here, and then a long transition into the belly. This is 11 inches long and just a little narrower than the body itself. Before I can rough out the body, I need to attach the saddle block. The saddle block is a 2-inch piece of material. First thing to do is to cut the 45-degree angle for the bottom. Then take the pattern, outline it, and cut out the basic shape. Next thing to do is to countersink 1/2 inch holes for the screws that's going to hold it down. They have to be countersunk so they'll be out of the way. When I shape this out, hollow it out into a round shape, it won't run into the heads of the screws. Next thing to do, shape the back round. I've drawn a line here 13.5 inches from the front of this seam, and drawn a line across for the guide, which I'll then line up here. And then I'll take the screws and screw it down. I'm not going to glue it at this time. I'll glue it later so I can take it off when I need to carve around it. Now that all the glue up is done, I get to the fun part. That's where I take a heavy chisel, heavy mallet, and start shaping it. I want to shape this neck so that it blends from a shoulder and then gradually into the neck. Taking this part out and then bringing this block down gradually, taper into the mane. I've roughed out the neck now, very rough, and the throat along the top of the shoulders, and started to bring it back, tapering it into the back of the neck. I've left a lot of material here for the mane, and on the other side I've left a lot of material for the mane on this side also, rounded the shoulders and tapered it back to the back of the neck. Next thing I want to do is shape the rest of the body and the rear, leaving the saddle block in place at this time so I can shape around it. The saddle block will come down along here for the saddle eventually, and then around. Now that I've rounded off the corners, the rear, under the belly, roughed out both sides, I'm going to take this portion down and start making the seat. I'm going to round the inside of the saddleback. I'm going to leave this section up here because a pommel is going to be glued on here, so I don't want to go too far in. I'll save that for when I put the pommel on. Alright, I've got the back of the seat dished out. The next step is to go around everything and smooth it out with a file or a rasp. I'm using a Stanley Sureform. Now I've got the legs rasped down to the shape that I want. Now the 1-inch piece that's glued onto the side at the 2-inch, there's certain glue lines. You see the glue line where it's laminated. Probably won't show up very well on the camera, so I'll outline with a pencil. It's right here. It goes in here and then meets at the top of this hump at the back of the hook. Around here and at the top. And on the front, comes in here and then goes under. I've left this fat for a thigh. Now if you used a separate piece here and here, there'll be a break in between these two, and it should be taken down just a little bit more into that break so there isn't a straight glue line here. Let's take a look at it from the rear. The inside of the leg will look the same as the outside as far as where the glue line is. Right through here it's about 1.25 inches, and then it narrows here to 1 inch and then spreads out again for the thickness of the upper thigh. The front legs were wrapped. In this situation there were 2 separate pieces here, so the glue line is here, comes around for this piece just below this portion here, takes a dip here, and then just meets at this hump, just like on the rear leg. Here's the glue line for the top piece, and then it's left thick for this portion. And I shallowed out this portion, so this will be the indication of the thigh, and later I'll define this bone. Take a look at it from the front. Right now this knee joint is just a little bit wide. That'll be tapered out later in the final sanding. It's about 1.25 inches here at the narrowest, and widens up a little wider at this joint. You don't want this joint to be too fat, or it'll end up looking like Popeye. The next thing I want to do is start refining the head. Going back to the head pattern, your pattern has the mouth drawn into it and a position right here for the center of the bit. You're going to lay that out here and mark that position, the center, where that bit's going to go. And then mark an indication on the front part of the mouth, on the upper and lower jaw. Now that I have the position for the bit, I'll draw that in. And from there, draw in the mouth. The way I make the mouth, it kind of drops down and then goes back up toward the lip. Like that. Now I'm going to draw the teeth in. Starting back just a little bit. And then the line is straight across to the bottom of the lower lip. And the last tooth will end out in here. The bottom teeth are a little smaller than the top teeth. Next thing to do is to draw the same thing from the pattern on the opposite side. Now that I've drawn the mouth on the other side, I've got a mark, I'm going to put a line from the top lip on this side to the top lip of the other side, and from the bottom of the teeth to this side, draw a line connecting it to the bottom teeth of the opposite side. And to the bottom lip and the bottom teeth. Now I'm going to draw a line just under the teeth and under the top of the lip back to the bit. And that line I'm going to use as a guide. I'm going to take a fine-tooth handsaw and cut through just under that line all the way back to the bit. Making sure when I cut to follow the line so that it comes out on the other side in the same position as this side. Okay, cut this line with the saw. I'm not going to cut any other lines. I'm not going to cut out a section through the mouth. I'll be carving the rest out so that there'll be room for a tongue in here. The next step is to cut this off here at a 45-degree angle, cutting down almost halfway through the 2-inch section. It's going to take just about 3/4 of an inch, maybe a little more than 3/4 of an inch off at a 45-degree angle. Now that I've got this angle, it's 45, it is halfway through the 2-inch piece. I'm going to draw the lips back in, top and bottom. And then do the same on the other side. The next step is to cut a position for the nostril. I'm going to take down this corner. I'm going to keep taking this down until I get it about the size of my thumb. Well, it's about as big as my thumb if I press down on it real hard. The next thing I want to do is put on the bridle. Put it in position, about equally spaced here, and then draw it in. And then finish drawing in the details on this pattern, the ring, and the detail here. The next thing to do is cut around this bit because it's the highest point in the carving. So I've got a small gouge that's roughly the same circumference. I'm going to chisel down around this bit about 1/8 of an inch, maybe just a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. Now that this is carved down 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to cut around the outside portion of this ring, not cutting through the strap. The strap goes around the ring. So I'm going to cut to the strap, and then I'm going to cut the top line of the strap down 1/8 of an inch, and the bottom part of the strap 1/8 of an inch, and finish the bottom part of the ring. I'm not going to do any of the inside of the strap at this time, and I'm only going to take the line out for this strap just past the eye on the top one and just under the cheek on the bottom one. Alright, I carved around the front ring and here to right behind the eye, and on this side just back of the cheek. The reason I'm not going to continue these out because I want to give myself an option of changing the position a little bit later if it comes out better behind the ear or something. Now on the front part of this, on the ring, I'm going to taper it down until it meets the bit, and then deepen it in front of the bit and the ring right here. The next thing to do is to bring this jawline through here and up through there. This is going to be carved out so you'll see the jawline going through this type of bit. Now if you have two straps, this would be the same situation. As I work into more and more detail, it becomes a series of refinements. This cheekbone, I want a 1/2 inch showing, and now that I have this 1/2 inch showing, it indicates that this portion of the face has to come down lower to match the cheekbone. So that's what I'm going to do now. And then I'm going to round off just a little bit, start rounding off the edge of the face here. Alright, I've taken this down so that it comes out and matches the front of the cheekbone. I've rounded off the edge up to the nostril and rounded off some of the nostril. While I'm at the nostril, I'm going to make it a little more circular by taking some of this off. Okay. And now I'm going to take material from the edge of the nostril, not coming too close. I'm going to leave a little bit just in case I have to refine it later, from around the nostril down to the ring. Take that out. I've rounded this out. Starting from the bottom of the nostril, I inclined it in toward the ring. The next thing is to define the mouth, redrawing the lines for the lips, and with a parting tool, or a V tool as it's called, I'm going to go in underneath that lip and cut in about 1/4 of an inch on the top lip and the bottom lip. Notice the way I've cut under the lip here, that I've left the teeth sticking out. So they're a little bit like buck teeth, both on the top and the bottom. Now the next thing is to round off the bottom chin. Take all this off and round it. Come underneath the lip, round down from there, and then round this corner off and come around under the nostril. Now the nostril, the bottom of it is right here. And I'm going to take this material out here and leave a fullness in the lip so it looks fleshy. Alright, carved in here, left a little fullness for the lip, rounded it out, made the bottom lip a little smaller than the top lip, and I might take that down just a little bit more later. Take the chin under. A horse's chin is real small, and now I want to just take this edge off a little bit. I'm not going to round the front of the face. The front of a horse is actually quite flat and angular. So just take this down just a little bit right here. Notice how the top of the head is brought in closer at this area and then flares out again to the tip of the nostril on both sides. And also notice in the front lip how it's narrower here. The next thing I'm going to do is to start developing the mane. My style of carving is to develop overall rather than finish any one particular part. In doing the mane, I'm going to group it. This will be one section for the front curl, and then another group of hair here, and then one that'll come around like this, and then a sweeping one that'll go here, around the neck, and drop down into a point. And then there'll be another bundle out here at the very end. I'll start defining these groups and then develop it from there. The first thing I'm going to do is take it down closer around the neck and round off this portion here, the back of the head. I'm going to leave this part here flat because that's where the ear is going to go on, and that'll be developed along with the ear. While I'm developing the mane, I have an idea of where I want to go, but I leave it a little bit loose so that I can develop the refinements later as I get into the carving. After 30 hours of carving, the mane is essentially complete. All I have to do is go back and clean it up, and then of course it'll be sanded also with the rest of the work. There are certainly different carving styles for manes, a lot of variation. It would be helpful if you went to the library and checked out a book on carousel horses so that you can see the different styles of carvings. Also, if you have the opportunity, visit a carousel and look at it firsthand. That can help you and give you some ideas on how you might want to carve a mane of your own. To keep the strands short as possible and have strands coming in between other strands. I like to put in twists and then add variations of twists, changing directions in the different groupings to make it interesting. Now that I've finished with the mane, I'm going to finish the facial details. Going back to the mouth, I want to round out the bottom teeth and the upper teeth, setting them at the proper angle. And then, right above the lower teeth, draw a line and take out this material here between the top and bottom teeth. I'm going to take this material out until it's just behind the lower teeth so that I'll still have room for the tongue. Now that the tongue has been cut back, I'm going to start taking it down and rounding off the front of it. Also, the front teeth, I'll end about right here and take this out. And on the bottom teeth, starting from about right there, and take that out behind it. Just to find, I'm going to take a small gouge and go up under the roof of the mouth and hollow all of this out. After that's done, I'll define the teeth, spacing them evenly. Should be about 4 to 5 teeth on the top, and of course the bottom teeth are smaller. I'll cut notches in between each tooth. In doing the nostrils, the first thing I do is to bring a little semicircle around here, just back of this line on both sides. Then I'm going to cut these down, cut down in here about 1/8 of an inch. The next step is to draw in this fleshy part of the nostril and then carve out behind that so that when it's done it looks like an apostrophe. Now that I've carved the nostrils in, the final step is to carve this down or sand it down so it has a bit of a hump here in the nose. Finish off this angle so it looks good, and then sand this edge downward a little bit. I'm using a 34mm glass eye. I'm going to place it here, resting on the cheekbone. I have about a 1/2 inch above the eye to the top of the brow. I'm going to draw a circle around that. The line of the eye will pass through here, and then I'm going to draw the top of the eyelid like that, and this will be the corner of the eye. The next step is to take a small gouge and cut around here about 1/8 of an inch into the eye. Then following underneath the eyelid, and the eyelid will be cut up and in, so the top of the eye will fit into it. I'll also be taking down this cheekbone and start softening these corners as I take the cheekbone down. Alright, I've taken this down here about 1/8 of an inch, or just a little bit more than that. And starting from the line across, I've dug down into the socket for the eyeball. At this point, it still doesn't quite fit. I'm going to open it up a little bit at each corner, and then I'm going to take it down a little at each corner, taking it down here and here, and then working with it until it just barely slips into the opening. Now that the opening is cut, the eye will slip up and then back down into position. Next thing I'm going to do is take the cheekbone down a little bit and form around the bottom of the eye, and then bring this brow down like this, and then define an eyelid. Here's the results of carving underneath the eye using a very small gouge to form this bottom eyelid. And I've cut an upper eyelid. I've brought the cheekbone down. I've also changed the angle a little bit so that the line would end up just under the nose. And I've softened the corners. The next thing will be to define this brow, more bringing it down and rounding off the top of the brow, and then it will taper back. Later it will be matched to the ear when the ear is in place. For the ears, I'm using a 2-inch piece of material, scrap material. I need a piece of material with the grain running this direction, so the grain runs a long way on the ear. Now that I've got the ear cut out with the grain running in this direction for the length of the ear, I'm going to turn it this way, and with the bandsaw I'm going to cut this excess off, coming to a near point at the top. So it will be a rounded tip. And then on the bottom I'm going to round off toward the back. So I'll take the bandsaw and I'll cut this portion off here. This is what it looks like after I've made the second cuts with the bandsaw. Narrow at the bottom toward the back, and then narrow it to a point at the top. And now I'm ready to take a whittling knife and carve out the ear shape. Now if these last few cuts are confusing to you, just start out with the basic pattern, the basic shape, and start carving from there.
The size and shape of the ear is just a matter of personal taste, what's pleasing to you. I'll just start cutting away. Now that I've got the shape carved, the next thing to do is to hollow out the inside of the ear using a gouge similar to this. I've got the ear hollowed out, shaped. I put it into position. I want it back far on the head, in front of the strap, in about a 1/4 inch from the side of the head, and twist it out a little bit. And then I'm going to trace around the position. Once I'm satisfied with the position, I'm going to take a pencil, put it in the center of the ear, press the lead in as far as I can, and then break it off. That'll leave enough lead so when I put it in position here, move it around a little bit, that will mark the center of the position on the head. The next thing I'm going to do is take a 1/2 inch drill, drill a 1/2 inch hole here, in about a 1/2 inch, and a 1/2 inch drill hole here, and go down in about 3/4 of an inch to an inch. After the holes are drilled, take a 1/2 inch piece of dowel, insert it, and then make sure that it fits so you have a nice joint here, nice tight joint. If it isn't tight, then drill the holes or adjust them accordingly until it does fit tight here. The next step will be to carve in the bridle above the eye and back of the head and blend it in with the ear. Don't glue the ear at this time. I've defined the bridle, cut the head back so that it matches with the ear, taken the neck down, defined more under the chin, and started shaping, doing the final shaping on the neck. The next thing on the face is to take out this material here. The cheekbone will show through here, so I'll have to make the illusion that the cheekbone continues through this opening. And I'll also do the ring, making sure that the ring passes through the bridle here. So the ring will be cut under here and then defined around here. The next thing I want to do is work on the body. So I've chosen the kind of trappings that I want to use, and I've transferred that onto the body. It's going to be a fairly simple saddle. This is going to be a blanket. Here's a chest strap that'll go around the front. At this time I've made an appropriate pommel, and I've attached it with a screw in the same manner as the rear of the saddle. I have to think about the placement of the pole. The pole in this case is going to go right directly behind the head in this area. Some pommels you can have put on and then not use a screw, just glue it on instead, and then drill a hole and have the brass pole going through the pommel itself. Now I'm going to shape
the saddle into the pommel and starting at the highest points, taking a V-tool and carving out the basic shape of the saddle first, and then the saddle blanket. And then I'll start putting in the details of the body, making the muscle definition. Here's what the saddle looks like after roughing it in. This is the high point, carved down to the saddle blanket. This is actually the second highest point for this chest strap, and then the saddle blanket, and then down to the body. I've also left the strap for the chest strap. The next thing to do is to sand this out and then put the rope and fringe around the blanket, detail out the chest strap, and put a little carving in this loop. I've sanded the saddle down and the saddle blanket. I put the details on the saddle. I carved this flower here because this is for some special people. And I took and cut an edge all around the saddle blanket, about 1 inch in from the border, and then with the chisel carve back into that line. It's about 1/16 of an inch deep. And then I'm going to take the V-tool and carve in the fringe for the blanket. And after that's done, I've got all that in, I'm going to come back and I put the rope braid in place. This is how I made the rope. First I cut behind it about 1/4 of an inch, and then cut that down, and then sand it, and then round it so it begins to look like this, and then take a V-tool and put the notches in there for the braid, and put it in an opposite direction of the fringe. The next detail to take care of is putting horseshoes on the hoof. I draw a line about 1/2 inch or a little less all the way around, and then I'll cut the line down in here and then shave some of the hoof off so the shoe is just a little bit larger than the hoof. And then I'm going to come in and draw a line about 1/2 inch all the way around inside here, and I'm going to hollow this out. I'm going to cut down about 3/16 of an inch and hollow this part out. The next step is to cut a line here for the top of the hoof all the way around, and then I'm going to curve this toward the center of the hoof, and then I'm going to cut out a V shape here for what's called the frog of the hoof. This is what the hoof and the horseshoe looks like roughed in before it's sanded. Take a look at the back ones. The final step will be to sand it, and then take a Dremel tool or a small gouge and put the marks along here for a horseshoe. To finish out the carving, I want to complete it with the tail. I'm using the jumper tail. I'm going to lay it out on 2-inch stock and cut it out. Now I could cut out 2 pieces like this and then glue them together side by side to give the proper thickness, but in most cases it'd be too thick through most of the tail. What I like to do is take 1-inch material and cut it out, same pattern, and then split it right here. Then I'll put the top half on one side and the bottom half on the other side. Now the reason I do that is so it'll start to have a twist in the tail. To complete this, I need one other piece up here at the top, so where it attaches to the horse it will be thick enough. And then this piece will be glued here. This is what the tail looks like after these pieces are glued on and roughed into shape. From the back, you can see how it's going to be a twist or an S shape. The next thing I'm going to do is round off the corners and begin shaping it. This is what it looks like after it's shaped. I've left some sharp edges here. The next thing I'm going to do is take the V-tool and cut a line in a spiral around like this into the other side. You can do several of these, making them close together here and then fanning them out as it goes around. And now it's ready for sanding. After I got this all sanded, then I fitted this against the rump, made sure it's a tight fit without any wide gaps around the edges. And then I drilled a 3/4 inch hole and cut a hardwood dowel about 3 inches long. I used epoxy glue in attaching this tail because I want it as strong as possible. And here again the bicycle inner tube comes in real handy. Now that I've got most of it sanded and I've carved behind the back of the saddle, put a little indentation back here to give a more roundness to the rump, I'm ready to put glue on the back of the saddle and screw it down. And also on the front of the saddle, the pommel, I've sanded it and I've finished the details for the fringe in front of the pommel, and now that's ready to be glued down also. Now that the saddle is glued on and fastened down, I can plug these holes up with the 1/2 inch dowel. Then you cut the peg down flush and sand it off. Now that I have the mane sanded behind the ear, I can go ahead and glue the ear in place. Then I'll finish sanding and making the fit on the ear after it's glued. To finish out this leg, I'm going to bring out this bone and then the tendons. This is what it looks like roughed in. I've made this bone here, rounded it out. I've made a line here and a separation to indicate the two bone structures here, and made this groove here indicate a tendon here. And now I'm ready to sand it. One of the final details to take care of on the body is to make this flap of skin in front of the rear legs and behind the front leg. I've got it complete. I've got it all sanded. Only thing left to do now is to paint it. Of course, there's all different kinds of paints that you can use. What I like to do is keep the wood in its natural state for most of it. So I give it 2 coats of polyurethane paint, and I sand in between each coat. And after that, I put the eye in, or the eyes, with silicone glue. And then mount it on a proper base, a suitable base. I use, for the jumper, a 1-inch pipe. And it's 19 inches long from the bottom of the chest to the floor or at the top of the base. And then I put a brass sleeve over this before I put the other flange on it. And then attach it. To give the illusion of the pipe continuing on through, I drilled down 1-inch hole for the jumper and then insert the brass tubing in the hole. On the standards I use 1/2-inch pipe and 3/4-inch brass tubing. Well, good luck on your project, and send me a picture. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see what you've done. Here it is after 2 coats of urethane and attached to the base. I'd like to make a correction and a clarification. Previously, I said the pipe was going to be 19 inches from the bottom of the chest to the top of the base. That's incorrect. The correct length is 21.5 inches from the bottom of the chest to the top of the base. Now the reason for that is so that the rear leg, the left rear, can be attached. It's attached through the base with a 3/8 inch lag screw and then pilot hole up through the hoof and then screwed into it so that it's secure. This makes the horse stable so that people can sit on it. Now if you're not concerned about people sitting on it, then the pipe can of course be longer.
Thank